All right, so have you ever like stopped and thought about how the way we raise cows, for food, like could actually have something to do with why our own waistlines are, well, expanding?
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah, right. It's like, are we fattening ourselves like we fatten cows? Get ready to dive deep because today we're going to explore the connections between how we raise cattle and the rise of all these like dietary diseases we see today.
I'm in.
Okay, so we've got some excerpts from academic studies, some really interesting stuff that breaks down like the biological differences in how humans and ruminants, like cows and sheep, digest fiber and like what all that means for their diets.
Yeah, their digestive systems are wildly different.
It's like different games entirely.
Totally.
So let's start with the big difference. Fiber. Humans, we just can't break down cellulose, which is like the main part of plant cell walls.
Right.
But cows, on the other hand, they've evolved with these like multi-compartment stomachs. Yeah, they've got these specialized bacteria in their gut that can actually turn that cellulose into energy.
It's pretty amazing, honestly. And that difference means cows are like built to thrive on a diet that's mostly grass, something we humans can't really digest.
It's so wild. And that's why changing their diet, from what they're naturally supposed to eat can really mess things up.
Totally backfire.
Yeah. And that actually brings us to the, I guess you could say the curious case of the candy-fed cow.
Wait, what?
Yeah, you heard that right.
Yeah.
Candy-fed. So our sources talk about how farmers have been switching from feeding cows grass to feeding them grain.
Oh, yeah.
But then they go even further, like incorporating sugary byproducts.
Yeah.
And even, get this, processed foods into their feed.
Whoa, seriously.
I know. Sounds crazy. But the thing is, it's all about getting those cows to gain weight faster and have more fat in their meat.
Makes sense.
Which, honestly, some people actually prefer that. Like, in certain culinary cultures, that's what they look for.
Yeah, definitely.
But, isn't that kind of bad for their health, though?
Absolutely. The studies we're looking at show that cows eating all that corn, they can get bloat and indigestion. And a lot of times they need meds, like actual medication, just to deal with these problems.
Wow.
Makes you think, are we really putting production, like efficiency, over these animals' well-being?
That's a great point, and it kind of makes you think about us, too. Like, speaking of fat, you know how we all kind of love that beautifully marbled steak?
Oh, yeah.
That marbling, that's basically fat inside the muscle.
Right, intramuscular fat, yeah.
But cows store their fat differently than we do, right? Like in their muscles.
Yeah.
Well, we store it kind of all over.
You got it.
I wonder if that, affects us when we eat that meat.
Absolutely. What you're getting at is super important. The fat in grain-fed beef, it's just different than the fat in grass-fed beef.
Okay.
And those differences, they can definitely have an impact on our health. Like, for example, grass-fed beef, it tends to have more of those omega-3 fatty acids, the ones that are good for your heart.
Yeah.
But the grain-fed beef, well, it can be loaded with saturated fat.
So even though that marbled look is, super appealing, it might not be the healthiest choice.
Sadly, yeah.
It's kind of like we're copying those unhealthy feeding practices that we use on the cows and doing it to ourselves.
Easily, right.
It's wild. Like, think about those potato chips you just can't stop eating,
Oh, yeah, I know those chips.
The food industry, they're sneaky. They totally manipulate the ingredients.
Right.
And the textures and even the flavors, all to make that food super, super palatable.
Hyperpalatable.
Yeah, hyperpalatable. So we just keep wanting more and more.
It's true. They want us to overeat. It's almost like they've figured out how to, hack our brains.
Oh, definitely. It's like how they figured out how to get cows to eat way more than they normally would, right?
Exactly.
Wow. So are we basically being trained to eat too much, just like those cows?
It's a bit unsettling to think about, isn't it?
It really is. It's kind of scary.
When you think about it, we've engineered cattle feed to make them gain as much weight as possible.
Right.
And now, our whole fat environment is doing the same thing to us.
Whoa.
And, we're seeing the effects of that everywhere. Obesity and diabetes, these are huge problems.
Yeah, you're right.
And it's all connected to what we're eating.
So basically, we've got to be more mindful of the food choices we make, right? It's not just about taste.
Right.
It's also about how that food might affect us in the long run.
Absolutely.
Okay. So the next time you're trying to choose between, let's say, a grass-fed burger or one of those heavily marbled steaks.
An example.
Or like, even if you're just reaching for another bag of chips, remember what we just talked about?
Yeah.
You know, how our bodies and those cows, how we respond to these manipulated diets.
It's all connected.
Yeah, it really makes you think.
This whole deep dive, it's been really interesting. Like, we've seen all these crazy parallels between how we raise animals for food and how we eat ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, what can we learn from all of this, right?
Right.
Both the good and the bad stuff, to help us have a healthier relationship with our food? What choices can we make to make sure we're actually nourishing ourselves instead of just satisfying, like, a craving?
You know, that's a really good question. I think that's something we all need to think about.
I agree.
Well, this has been an eye-opening conversation. I think we've all learned something today.
For sure.
So until next time, keep thinking critically about those food choices.
Absolutely.
And we'll see you on our next deep dive.